Hey, what is up? So for this video, I actually want to talk about a storyline in the plot of Better Call Saul as we head into the sixth and final season of the show. And that storyline revolves around just how did Saul Goodman first meet Ed the Disappearer? Now, as we all know from the plot of Breaking Bad, Ed the Disappearer played an extremely crucial role in the plot of Walter White as well as Jesse Pinkman in regards to attempting to assume a new identity when the proverbial shit hit the fan and the jig was up for Walter White and Jesse Pinkman's meth empire. Now, of course, Saul Goodman got in on this disappearing as well, and this was the vehicle by which Saul Goodman became Gene Takovic in the plot of Better Call Saul. Now for this video, I just want to go back to the plot of Breaking Bad to when Ed the Disappearer was first introduced to us and kind of look at the backstory of this character to see how it may affect the plot of Better Call Saul. Now before I get into it regarding the backstory of Breaking Bad, it's of course noted that Ed the Disappearer actually already appeared in Better Call Saul last season in the very first episode of Season 5 entitled Magic Man, where following Gene Takovic realizing that he was discovered by his cab driver who recognized him when he lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Gene then proceeded to call Ed the Disappearer to make arrangements for yet another extraction following him being recognized. But of course, following Ed telling Saul that this would be extremely difficult, as well as double the price compared to last time, following Ed telling Gene the specific details of this extraction, the camera then zooms in on Gene's face, where it appears that following him initially agreeing to this plan, Gene then decides to change his mind and tells Ed the Disappearer that he is going to quote-unquote fix it himself, and then hangs up the phone, thus ending the cold opening scene of this episode.
I've changed my mind.
Okay, so now with this backstory of Ed the Disappearer's appearance in the plot of Better Call Saul in Season 5 being presented, like I said, I now want to go back to the first time we ever heard any mention of this character in the plot of Breaking Bad, and this of course was in Season 4 of Breaking Bad in the episode entitled Bullet Points. In this scene, following Walt discovering that Hank is investigating the murder of Gail Bedecker along with the Albuquerque Police Department, Walt then goes to Jesse Pinkman's house to tell Jesse this information.
Gail's murder is being investigated. And I have it on good authority that they found fingerprints at the scene.
Of course, seeking some assurance that Hank will not know that Jesse committed the murder. Of course, with Jesse being in an absolutely emotional state at this point in time, ravished with guilt for having to kill Gail, surrounding himself with all of these degenerates in his home, trying to suppress all of the emotional guilt he's feeling, following Walt pressing him and making him go over the very specific details of Gail's murder. Jesse then throws Walt out of his house. This is then followed by a scene of Walt visiting Saul, telling him the horrible situation he and Jesse are currently in, also telling Saul that he fears for his own life, that Gus will kill him at the first chance he gets.
Should I not worry that Gus plans to murder me at the first chance he gets? Should I not worry that my drug-addicted partner doesn't seem to care whether he lives or dies? You should see his house. It's like Skid Row. He has actual hobos living there. Now, how long before Gus decides that he's too big of a risk?
Of course, this scene then leads to Saul telling Walt, and us as the audience learning for the first time, that Saul has a last resort option for Walt to seek a new identity should he need to.
Back pocket kind of thing, but if you really gotta protect yourself, disappear. Poof. Poof. There's a guy who can make it happen. Call him a disappearer.
Saul, of course, reminds Walt that this is a last resort, no turning back option, offering to give Walt this person's card if he so desires.
You want his card? There's gotta be something else that I can do.
Then, following this initial setup, the very next mention of this character in the plot of Better Call Saul comes up in the same season in the episode entitled Crawl Space. 6 episodes later, we're following Walt being fired by Gus and learning that Gus plans to kill Hank because Hank is onto Gus.
In the meantime, there's a matter of your brother-in-law. He is a problem you promised to resolve. You have failed. Now it's left to me to deal with him.
Following Walt being left in the desert, he then proceeds to go to Saul Goodman's office and telling Saul he needs the contact, which he offered him several episodes back, of disappearing.
This is a vacuum cleaner repair company.
What'd you expect? Haji's quick vanish? I don't even know the guy's name. You just call that number and you leave a message. You tell him that you need a new dust filter for a Hoover Max Extract Pressure Pro Model 60. I wrote it right on there. He'll call you back in 5 minutes.
Now, okay, before we break down this dialogue here by Saul Goodman, the reason why I feel like this dialogue is so important that Saul does not even know this character's name at this point in time in season 4 is, of course, due to the fact that the actor who plays Ed the Disappearer, Robert Forrester, passed away in 2019 of cancer and thus can no longer portray his character on screen in the plot of Better Call Saul. Now, this is actually a really interesting point to delve into, in my opinion, regarding the production of Better Call Saul, because I really feel that, especially in season 5 of Better Call Saul, which I discussed earlier in this video, how Saul changed his mind via this extraction, it's really possible that this was not the original intention by the creators for the plot of Better Call Saul, but due to the fact that Robert Forrester was dying with brain cancer, it's very possible that this scene had to be rewritten with the parameters of this character may not be able to portray a plot because unfortunately he's dying. And with that being said, I really feel this piece of dialogue of Saul not knowing who this character is several years down the line in the plot of Breaking Bad compared to where we are now in the plot of Better Call Saul, it's very possible that if Saul Goodman in season 6 of Better Call Saul learns about this contact, it's going to be somewhat vicariously, potentially through somebody else, and he's clearly not going to meet this contact directly based on the canon of his dialogue, which he said to Walter White in the plot of Breaking Bad. So that actually could be quite fortunate for the creators heading into next season, that whatever plot they want to cultivate around Ed the Disappearer, due to Saul Goodman's lack of knowledge of exactly who this person is, it may make writing a plot potentially possible, despite the fact we don't have the actors to portray this character on screen. Now, of course, it should also be noted, and actually coincidentally in the video I discussed yesterday, we saw Nacho Varga looking at 2 fake identification cards for the country of Canada. Now, while I certainly don't think Ed the Disappearer had anything to do with this, I definitely think the sort of thinking that Nacho has in his head of him having to flee is, of course, a perfect sort of linear segue to Nacho potentially using a character like Ed the Disappearer in order for him to flee Albuquerque with his father. But of course, due to the fact that the actor passed away, we don't know exactly what the creators' initial intentions were with this plot, and now what they will do in spite of not having this actor available to play this character next season. And due to the fact that Saul Goodman at this point in time, several years down the line, of course, as I said, because of the plot of Breaking Bad, the timeline is very inconsistent. We don't know exactly how many years season 4 of Breaking Bad is ahead from season 6 of Better Call Saul, but due to the fact that several years in the future, likely 5 at least, that Saul does not know who Ed the Disappearer is, I really feel like it's going to be very possible for Saul to learn about this character next season without him having to meet the character on screen next season. Alright, that's all I really got. And yeah, despite the fact that the actor Robert Forrester passed away in the plot of Better Call Saul, I still think that based on this dialogue that I discussed in this video, I still think it's extremely possible that Ed the Disappearer plays a role in the plot of Better Call Saul in season 6, especially since he already played a role in the plot of Better Call Saul in season 5, and I'm very curious to see how the creators walk this tightrope if and when they decide to add this character into the plot of Better Call Saul next season. As always, my name is Anton Jackson. Thank you so much for watching this video.